Hey YouTube, thanks for tuning in. Andy here. This is going to be a tech support video where I'm going to show you how you can reinstall your graphics card drivers on Windows 10. I'm going to show you how to do this on 3 different systems, one with an Nvidia GPU, one with an AMD GPU, and a third with an Intel integrated GPU. Before we get to that though, we're going to take an overview look at the process, but before we even get to that overview, we're going to talk about some of the reasons why you might want to reinstall your graphics card driver. So let's get started looking at some of those reasons why you might want to do this. Okay, so the number one reason that you're going to want to reinstall your graphics card driver is if you're having some kind of a problem. So this can be some sort of a glitch where you're having, your screen is like flickering and going black. This could be, that windows are going blank or going white, that graphics aren't being rendered correctly, so things look really weird on your screen. Or this could be your computer crashing and you get the blue screen and it mentions something about the GPU. Or if you're just having a lot of computer crashes, reinstalling drivers is never a bad idea. You could also be having a performance issue, if you're a gamer, that you're not getting the expected performance, the frames per second in the games that you play. Or if you're a creative professional, maybe like the 3D acceleration in Adobe Premiere or Photoshop isn't working, so you're not actually getting the full functionality out of your computer. The other reason that you might want to upgrade or reinstall your graphics drivers beyond having an issue like this is if you just really want to make sure that you're on a specific version of a graphics driver, because maybe you are a creative professional or you're a developer where you're trying to make sure you have a super stable system. That's the other reason why you might want to do this. So now that we've covered those reasons that you might want to consider reinstalling your graphics driver, let's take a look at the overall process of how we're going to do that. Alright, so the first step to reinstalling the graphics driver is going to be the same regardless of why you're doing it, and that's going to be to use the device manager in Windows 10 to determine what kind of GPU you have. And so that's going to be pretty simple, and we're going to show that in detail when I actually walk through with the systems. So once you know what kind of GPU you have, the second step is going to be to download the correct driver and an up-to-date version of the correct driver for that GPU. And so there's only one way to actually know 100% that this is going to be the correct driver, which is to actually go ahead and install it. Because one of the things that annoys me with the graphics card drivers, especially with laptops, is that a lot of times you actually have to get the graphics card driver from the laptop manufacturer rather than from the graphics card manufacturer themselves. So like if it's an Nvidia graphics card, if you have a GeForce 1050 Ti, you might actually have to get like a Dell driver initially before you can then update that within the application if you want to get fully up to date. So that's something that you should be aware of on some laptops, but usually you should be able to go straight to the AMD, Nvidia, or Intel website to download the drivers. So what I'd recommend is when you're actually grabbing the driver, go ahead and try to install it. And if you're reinstalling your graphics drivers for troubleshooting reasons because you're having some sort of a problem, just installing this driver will actually attempt to upgrade it in most cases, and that might actually fix the issue all on its own. So this might actually be enough. You might be able to stop at sort of that second step of just installing the graphics driver to make sure it works. But if you've already done that, and you know that you need to fully remove the other graphics driver and that you want to do a complete GPU driver reinstall, the next step after you've downloaded the correct graphics driver and an up-to-date one is going to be to remove the current graphics driver. So this will also be done from the device manager, and you'll want to make sure to tell it to actually remove that driver and uninstall after you uninstall the device. So once you've done that, you'll have to reboot the computer, and then Windows should be stuck using just the stock Windows driver for that. And then you'll want to go ahead and install that new driver. You'll have to reboot again, and you should be all set. So that's a basic overview of the process, but now we're going to actually dive in and do that on 3 different systems. Like I said, I've got an Nvidia system, which is going to be a laptop, an Intel integrated graphics system, which is also going to be a laptop, and then we'll also be doing this on my desktop that has an AMD GPU. So we're going to start with the Nvidia laptop, then do the AMD GPU on the desktop, and then we'll save the Intel HD graphics on a laptop for last. Let's get started. Okay, so here we are with the first computer This is a Lenovo 530S, which has an Nvidia MX150 GPU in it. And I already know that, but you may not know what kind of GPU is inside of your computer, whether it's a laptop or a desktop. So that's what we're going to use the Windows Device Manager to find out. So the easiest way to get to the Device Manager, in my opinion, is to do a right click on the Start menu. Let me make sure that I get the Start menu in the shot. So I'm going to go down and right click on the Start menu. And this will bring up a list of options. There's a lot of good stuff in this menu. So if you didn't know about right-clicking on the Start menu, it's one of my favorite Windows 10 tips. But we want to look for Device Manager, and so I'm going to find it's about in the middle of the top section, and I'm going to go ahead and open the Device Manager. And so in the Device Manager, this is going to give you a list of all of the hardware that's on your computer. And so we've got just literally everything. And so what we want for the GPU is going to be display adapters. So I'm going to double click on that. And as you can see, I've got 2 display adapters on this computer. And most laptops, if you have a dedicated GPU on a laptop, so like a gaming laptop or something that's a little more high performance, where it's got an Nvidia or an AMD GPU, you're almost always going to have 2 sets of display adapters because you'll also have the Intel integrated HD. So you may actually want to do the reinstall for both if you're having like really bad display adapter issues, like in really bad artifacting. But I would definitely start with just one because you always want to do, as little work as possible. And it's not necessary to try and do both of these at the same time from my experience. So we're going to do just the GeForce MX150. So we found that in the Device Manager. And so now I'm going to go open Google Chrome, and we're going to see if we can find a driver for that. And so since we're in Google Chrome, you're automatically sort of ready to go on a Google search. I'm going to bring the window down a little bit just so that everything is in view for the camera. And let's do a search for MX150 driver. Okay, and so I've got an ad blocker, otherwise I might be seeing some obnoxious ads. But we want to look for, it looks like it's going to be GeForce.com, dedicated graphics for laptops. And yep, and GeForce.com. And so I'm going to go back actually to Google really quick because this is actually pretty important if you're not super familiar with downloading drivers. On Google search results, there's the big headline for the website, but then right below that, it actually gives you the HTTPS www. And that tells you the website. And so you want GeForce.com here. And so anytime you're downloading drivers or really any programs, it's a good idea to look for that because that can give you a lot of information about the actual source that you're getting it from. Okay, so I am on the page for the MX150, and let's see, I'm just totally winging this. So really what I'm going to go ahead and do, we're on the GeForce website, I'm just going to go to drivers. So you could save yourself a lot of trouble by just going to GeForce.com and clicking on drivers up at the top. So, all right, let's say there's the automatic driver update, which I found that usually works, but I'm not gonna do it. That's one of the reasons I like going to the Device Manager and looking at our own GPU is that we can just come down here and tell it what we have. So we have a GeForce GPU because it's an MX150. It's not an RTX 20 series. So we want, all right, MX100 series notebooks, there we go. But if you've got something else, you'll just wanna find it here. I have another one that has a GTX 1050 Ti. That would be in the 10 series notebooks, right? So, but we wanna go back to our MX100 series for notebooks. Windows 10 64-bit. So if you're not sure about what version of Windows 10 you're running, you can go back down to the Start menu or the Start button, and we can right click on that again, just like we did earlier. And then we can go to System, and that will tell us in here, right in Device Specifications, that we are on 64-bit operating system for system type, which is great. You're almost always going to be on 64-bit if you're reinstalling your graphics card drivers, and really in 2019, you're almost always going to be on 64-bit. So I'm just gonna leave everything default here. Leaving it on default will almost always be your best option once you actually find your specific graphics card drivers. Just a reminder, it is important to make sure that you get the correct choice between notebook and desktop. All right, so we're gonna start the search, and it's gonna give us, I think, probably a couple of options. I'm gonna have to scroll down. And so we've got the WHQL. So we've got just a few different choices. You can see the release dates on these all the way back to January 15th. And it looks like they have the newest ones at the very top. So we've got the game ready driver. I'm gonna go ahead and grab that and say download on this next page. All right, and so I've got the driver downloading right here, the most recent one. It's 542 megabytes. So that's gonna take about 1 minute because my internet is decent. Oh, it says 2 minutes now. Internet's decent, but it's not the best, and I'm on Wi-Fi. So it's gonna take a little bit of time. We will speed that up, and then once that's finished downloading, we will go ahead and uninstall the current driver. Okay, so we are just about finished downloading. There it is. And so, like I mentioned before, the most surefire way to know that a driver is going to work is to go ahead and try and install it. So let's go ahead and give this a shot and see what happens. Okay, so it's been a really long time checking for system compatibility, but it did give me a pass, so we're on the right track. So it's giving me options here for the graphics driver and GeForce Experience, or just the graphics driver. Since it got past the compatibility check, I'm gonna go ahead and just cancel here, since that means I know it's gonna work. Like I mentioned before, if you're having issues, if that's why you're going down this road, I would go ahead and continue here and go all the way through this installation and reboot, because simply installing this newer driver very well might fix your issue. You know, most of the time that fixes graphics drivers issues, simply installing the newer one. But if you've already done that, you know, then, and you've rebooted and you're still having issues, so you want to go with the completely remove the old driver option, that's the path we're going to take next. So I'm going to cancel this, and it's very simple from this point forward. If you continue going, just agree and continue, and then it goes right down that path. So we will continue, or say cancel rather, and now it's time to go get rid of the currently installed driver. So I'm back in Device Manager. I'm going to close it again just so that we can all have a reminder how we got there. The easiest way, my favorite way to get to Device Manager, is to go down to the Start menu in the bottom left, do a right click on that, and then go to Device Manager, which will be in the middle of the top menu there. All right, and so we wanted to expand display adapters here. You can either double click to expand, or there's the little arrow to the left. And now we're actually going to double click on our Nvidia GeForce MX 150. And this time we're gonna have our tabs up at the top of this properties window. And in here we wanna choose the driver tab. And now let's go ahead and choose the option, the very last option that says uninstall device. And so this is going to actually remove the MX 150 from the system. So when Windows reboots, it's gonna say, you know, there's this unidentified display adapter, something like that. But what's really important here, since we're doing our full driver reinstall, is this checkbox that says delete the driver software for this device. So I'm gonna go ahead and check that and then say uninstall. And it says uninstalling devices. All right, and so now it is just gone. Display adapters now shows only the UHD Graphics 620. If you're on a system that doesn't have dual graphics cards, or if I had uninstalled the HD graphics, the Intel, I probably would have seen some screen flickering here. That didn't happen because I do have the dual graphics system, and it was already running on HD graphics since it's you know, on battery, and I think just showing the desktop and this kind of stuff, it does that anyway. But anyway, that uninstall is completed. So at this point, it didn't tell me I need to reboot, but it's a good idea to go ahead and reboot anytime that you uninstall a graphics driver. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so the system has finished rebooting, and now it's time to go ahead and, actually I'm gonna open the device manager. We're gonna make sure it's still gone. It's never a bad idea to double check that the display adapter, that the driver rather, wasn't still lingering somehow. Okay, we do still just have the UHD graphics. So now we're gonna go to our folder wherever we downloaded the new driver, and we need to go install that now. And so I put that in downloads, and we can see the Nvidia logo just sticking out like a sore thumb right there. So let's go ahead and double click on that to open it up. Say yes, we do want to run that, and let that installation go. And I'm going to speed this up. Okay, so the Nvidia installer has finished. It's giving me an option to launch the GeForce experience. I don't want to do that. I don't necessarily want a desktop shortcut for that either. The reason I did choose to include the GeForce experience is because honestly, I find that to be an easy way to update drivers and manage them. Okay, and so that is now installed. If we go to Device Manager, let's just check. I may have goofed up on my graphics a little bit, and we might not have to reboot for it to just start working. It's showing up already. It says it's working properly. So there we go, graphics driver installed. I'm superstitious. You used to always have to reboot after installing drivers. So just to be safe, I'm gonna go ahead and reboot. And for superstitious reasons, and I might be wrong about this, I'm gonna go ahead and still recommend that you reboot after installing the graphics driver as well. So that is Nvidia. Okay, so here we are on the AMD desktop. I have turned up the size a little bit to hopefully make it a bit easier to see than the native resolution would have been. So, like before, we're gonna go to Device Manager just to double check what our display adapter is. So we've double clicked on display adapters and it's showing a Radeon RX 580. So let's go find a driver for that. So let's open Google Chrome. And I'm just gonna do a search for RX 580 driver. Okay, and like I said before, I've got an ad blocker, so you might see some ads at the very top. You probably wanna skip those. And we've got the very first result I'm seeing, which is a good one, is Radeon RX 580 gaming graphics card. And then there's previous drivers below that, but we actually probably just want this top one, and I bet there's a link for drivers there. And we can see, like I mentioned before, we've got the link right below the headline where it says https www.amd.com. So that's a really good one. So let's go ahead and go there, amd.com, and right to the RX 580 page. Drivers and support shows it right here. If that moves around, there's also, it looks like they have drivers and support up at the top. In fact, I'm just gonna go ahead and click on that one. And this takes us to the AMD drivers page. And it says, get drivers and support for your RX 580. And I think it's detecting that since I already have drivers installed. It may not automatically detect that. I've seen it not work before. So let's go ahead and I'm gonna manually pick my driver. So it has these two columns of options here. Yeah, you should be able to see those. And so I'm gonna choose graphics. There's some different, if you've got integrated graphics like the G series Ryzens, they've got those, but I just need graphics. And so let's see, not Vega, Radeon 500 series. And yeah, some of the naming is a little weird because you might want to look for RX 500, but you just want Radeon 500 series, and then you've got RX 500 over here. So the RX 500 series, I'll click on that. Then we've got my choices, and I will say RX 580, and then submit. All right, and this is giving me my choices for drivers and software downloads. I'm on Windows 10 64-bit. There's Windows 7 software right there. And I can see, so I clicked on Windows 10, that expanded my options. They've got a couple of different choices. I want to go ahead and probably just take this very newest one. It looks like they have the May release and then also an April one. I'm going to go ahead and grab May. All right, we can see the download has started. This one says it's going to take a little less than a minute. It's about 350 megabytes, so about 200 megabytes smaller than the driver for the MX150 from Nvidia was. So we will speed this up. All right, so the download has finished. I'm gonna go ahead and open it up. So like I did on the Nvidia, and mentioned before, it's a good idea to try and install the driver just to make sure that it is going to be compatible with your system before you go uninstall the other driver. And also, if you're doing this for troubleshooting purposes, just trying to install the newest driver, just trying to upgrade to it straight, is a great step and is a lot faster than going through the full uninstall. So go ahead and just go through all the way with the install if you're doing this for troubleshooting purposes. And then if that doesn't work, you can move on to the step we're gonna take, which is where we'll go remove the current graphics driver. And just in case anyone is wondering while we wait, show off the specs of this system. This is my Ryzen desktop that I use for most stuff. Ryzen 7 2700, overclocked to 3.7 just because I'm on a pretty meh cooler. All right, enough bragging about the system. 32 gigs of RAM though, we'll brag a little bit. Enough bragging, let's go ahead and say accept and express install. And in fact, it's already, it looks like it's already detected that it's good. So that's a good sign. Like I said, you may want to go all the way through that. I'm not going to do it just to save time, but go ahead and go through that install and make sure it finishes, just so that you know that it's compatible. And like I said, that's a good troubleshooting step all on its own. But I'm going to X out of that instead of installing, and we're going to go uninstall my current graphics driver. So I'm going to right click on the start button again so that we can go back to the device manager. And then in here, we want to go to display adapters and expand that. And then we're going to right click on our Radeon RX 580 series. And in this properties window that opens up, we want to go to the driver tab at the top. And then we're going to choose the very last option here to uninstall the device, which will remove it from Windows. Fortunately, it's not going to remove it from the computer totally, but Windows will be using the generic display driver after this. And so after we've clicked on uninstall device, before you just go click on uninstall, it's important to check this box to delete the driver software for this device. Otherwise, it's just going to automatically reinstall the exact same driver that was on before. And so if there's a problem with that driver that's causing the issue you're having, or if you want to switch to a different driver, you don't want that to happen. So we want to make sure to check that box to delete the driver software for this device. And then we will uninstall. As you can see, the screen flickered. Things are going a little bit nutty because the display adapter changed. And if you watch the Nvidia part, that was on a laptop with dual GPUs, and that didn't happen because it was actually using the integrated GPU to power the screen at the time. So you're definitely gonna see the screen blink. We can see that it now says video controller VGA compatible in the device manager. It also got smaller, but we can see it's now just showing a generic device. And so I'm gonna go ahead and reboot. I put that in the steps because it used to always prompt you to reboot anytime that you uninstalled a device or a driver, or that you installed one, but that hasn't been happening today when I've been making these videos. So I'm not sure if that's just no longer necessary, but I'm gonna go ahead and continue to do it, whether it's necessary or not. It doesn't take that long. Okay, so we have finished rebooting now after having uninstalled our driver. We got this message popping up, no AMD graphics drivers installed, or the AMD driver is not functioning. Please install a driver. Okay, so that didn't happen on the Nvidia laptop, so that's pretty interesting. So we're gonna go to our downloads folder where we have the driver that we just downloaded. I have mine sorted by date, so it's right there at the very top, and let's just double click to open that driver installation. I'll say yes, and then install. All right, and so we're now being given the option for the install, either the Express or the Custom. You can definitely do the Custom. I'm just gonna do the Express for this to make it simpler. Okay, and as you can see, we've got some screen blinking action. Always a good sign when you're doing something display driver related, because that means it's actually getting in there and doing something. It's like when you see the crust start to brown on a frozen pizza that you're cooking. Okay, so the installation has finished and I am being prompted to restart now, so I will go ahead and do that. And really, as long as nothing goes wrong during this reboot, we are going to be all set. Okay, so we have finished rebooting now, so the last step is to go back to the device manager and check to make sure that our display adapter is back showing as an RX 580. And there it is. So we have now finished completely reinstalling the display adapter for our AMD graphics card. Let's give that one a thumbs up. All right, so last but not least, we will be updating or reinstalling the graphics driver on a system using Intel integrated graphics. So this is an HP ProBook that has Intel graphics. So to see exactly what model it is, because I actually don't know off the top of my head for the system, we are going to go to the device manager by right-clicking on the start button in the very bottom left corner, and then going up to device manager, which is about halfway in between that top section. In our device manager, it's going to give us a list of all of the hardware on the system. We want to find display adapters, and we can double click on that. We can double click on that, and it will tell us exactly what graphics card or GPU we have in the system. So this one is using Intel HD Graphics 4000. So that's step one, checked off the list. So our next step is that we actually want to go grab the drivers for that. So let's go ahead and open, I'm going to use Chromium for this, Google Chrome, the open source version of Google Chrome. And let's do a search for Intel HD Graphics 4000 driver. There we go. All right, and we can see this very first listing. As with the others, I have an ad blocker installed, so I'm not getting the Google ads at the top of the search results. But the very first one I'm seeing looks really good. It says downloads for Intel HD Graphics 4000 drivers and software, and the link that it shows right below that is https://downloadcenter.intel.com. So that looks really good. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that one. All right, and it's giving me this option to automatically update your drivers. We don't need to do that because if we scroll down, it's just going to give us a few actual download options. So it looks like this one looks pretty good, that it says Intel graphics driver for Windows, type is drivers, OS, Windows 10 32-bit and 64-bit. Great, so those are both covered. So that's the one that we want, this one that says Intel graphics driver for Windows, and it's got both versions of Windows 10 listed over there. So let's click on that. And it's going to take us to this page for the actual software itself. And Intel makes this a little more confusing than the others. They actually put the downloads over here on the left, I think. This is what we want. So we do have these actually broken out now depending on what version of the operating system you're using, 64-bit or 32-bit. So let's just go ahead and grab this top one for 64-bit, Windows 10 64-bit, 8, and 7. So it looks like all the 64-bits are together, and that's what I'm on, a 64-bit OS. If you're not sure if you need 64-bit or 32-bit, you can check that out by going down to our Start menu, or the Start button again, and right-clicking on the Start button, and then going up to System. And then in the system, it will tell you under System Type in the Device Specifications area, it will tell you if it's a 64-bit operating system, which is what mine says, or if it's a 32-bit operating system. So let's go ahead and grab that 64-bit download. And the download is started. It says it's going to take about 20 seconds. This one is only 121 megabytes in size, so quite a bit smaller than either the Nvidia or the AMD driver packages. Of course, this is a much older graphics chipset, so it would make sense that there are less features, plus it's lower performance, so they're not going to try and pack in quite as much stuff. All right, the download is finished, and it's just thinking about finalizing the download. Okay, and so like I recommended for AMD and Nvidia, I'm actually going to go ahead and open the driver and basically start the installation process to make sure that it's definitely the right driver and compatible with this system. I would also recommend, if you're just doing this for troubleshooting purposes, you do have to give it permission. If you're just going through this process for troubleshooting purposes, it's a good idea to just try installing this most up-to-date driver to begin with. Because that will actually fix a lot of issues. You don't necessarily have to remove the current driver and go through that whole process that I'm going to be going through in this video. Okay, so we will say next, and it's extracting files. All right, and so it's giving me the option to, automatically run Arrow. And so if it gets to this point, I'm relatively certain that it's already checked for compatibility and that it doesn't let you go any further. And I'm pretty sure this is the right driver anyway. So like I said, I would recommend, if you're doing this because you're having problems, go ahead and just continue. If you haven't already just gone through this full installation, go ahead and just continue on here and say next, and just go through, sort of keep hitting next. It'll get you to the end. And use your judgment on some choices, because we're going to go through the installation in a moment anyway. I'm going to go straight to now, just removing the current driver that's installed. So yeah, setup not complete. Are you sure you want to exit? Yes. All right, so let's get out of Chrome, because to uninstall the current driver on the system, we need to go back to the device manager. If you close that and it's no longer open on your computer, I'm going to go back to it on mine by going down to the Start button and right-clicking the Start button, and then going up and choosing Device Manager. So in here, we want to go double-click on Display Adapters again, and this time we're going to right-click on the Intel HD Graphics 4000, and then we want to go to Properties, and in the Properties window, let's go to the Driver tab and choose that very last option here that says Uninstall Device. And a really important note here is, if you don't choose the option to delete the driver software for this device, the second you reboot the computer, Windows is going to just install the exact same driver. And so that might be okay. That, like I said, there's lots that can go into this. But if there's an actual problem with the driver, like a compatibility issue or that it's corrupted, that may not fix your problem. So I'm going to recommend that we check this box and say delete the driver software for this, so that it's going to wait for us to install that new driver that we downloaded. And then we'll say uninstall. All right, we did get some screen blinking action, because this is the only display adapter on this computer, and when that's the case and you uninstall the driver, the screen's going to blink some, and it's now saying that we need to restart the computer, so I will say yes. Okay, so we are just about done rebooting. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the device manager and just double check that our display adapter is now just showing up as a generic one rather than showing the Intel. Yep, we've got some Windows stuff. See, this is making me, this almost looks like there's that it's trying to reinstall the driver. Let's go see what it says. Just says Microsoft Basic Display Adapter. That's exactly what we want, just a generic driver. So I'm gonna go to the Downloads folder now on the computer and go start the installation for that driver that we downloaded. I've got mine sorted by date, so it's right at the top. Let's double click on that or double tap on it and get this installation process started. Okay, so the installation process has finished and we've got a nice little next button now. And again, it's telling us that we need to restart the computer for the changes to take effect. I'm gonna go ahead and leave it on the option to restart and say finish. And then once this comes back up, we'll make sure that it's detecting our Intel HD graphics once again, and we will be all set on this machine. Okay, so it is assessing desktop graphics. This is WinSat Direct 3D. Who knows? That's, I think, a Windows 7 sort of legacy thing left over on these Intel drivers related to the old transparency effects. But that reboot is now done, so I'm just going to go back to the device manager again, and we're going to check our display adapters. and make sure, there we go, Intel HD Graphics 4000. This device is working properly. So we are all set. We're gonna give this a thumbs up on the Intel HD Graphics driver reinstall. Okay, well, as you can see, that process can be a little bit time consuming and involves a few steps, but it's actually not too complicated, and it can save you a lot of trouble and potentially money if you're thinking about replacing a graphics card, or heaven forbid, buying a whole new computer. So anyway, I hope that helps. If you have any questions about this process, definitely leave a comment and I'll try to help if I can. I'm not a super expert in the world of graphics cards, but I'll do what I can. And who knows, maybe even if I don't have an answer, someone else watching this video might be able to chime in and help out as well. Like I said, I hope this video was helpful, and if you have any questions, let me know.